Hello, everyone. Welcome to the March Ivy Talk. We are very excited to be hosting this talk this evening. I am Susie Farmer, the Education Director at Ivy Creek Natural Area and Historic Riverview Farm. And I'm excited to have you all here with us this evening. Miss Sarah Morton is talking tonight on behalf of the Minority and Veteran Farmers of the Piedmont. The Minority and Veteran Farmers of the Piedmont is a nonprofit organization that is located in the rolling foothills of the Piedmont region of Virginia. They are a grassroots organization that was established in July of 2019 to develop educational and experimental learning opportunities through hands-on instruction. They function to promote training, coaching, and mentorships for minorities, veterans, farmers, and youth, both urban and rural. Ms. Morton has been a champion for the agricultural industry since she was 7 years old when she raised swine for 4-H. Since then, her impressive professional agricultural journey has focused on equity, access, agricultural sustainability, and local food sovereignty. This winter, she was awarded $20,000 from ATF's. Ms. Morton, do you want to tell us what ATF stands for?
It's American Farmland Trust.
From American Farmland Trust's Women for the Land Pilot Transformational Grant Program, which assists women farmers and ranchers in successfully launching, growing, and sustaining farms in the faces of forces impacting food and agricultural systems. Her farm, Cattle Run Farm, is a third-generation family, Black and veteran-owned and operated farm providing fresh and local foods to families and communities. It also serves as a learning lab for veterans with disabilities, youth, families, and aspiring farmers. They partner with the minority veteran farmers of the Piedmont to market locally sourced and grown foods to food banks, local markets, churches, and food hubs across the region. She already implements important land stewardship practices, including fencing off waterways to help protect the Chesapeake Bay and fostering land restoration using swine, chicken tractors, pasture rotation, manure, and composting. The farm will use the grant from ATF to further these efforts and implement a sustainable livestock production system. A sustainable livestock system contributes to food security and environmental stewardship by using uncultivated land for food production and is effective for carbon sequestration to reduce greenhouse gas emissions that contribute to global warming. Ms. Morton is an amazing example of a powerhouse of a woman producer pointing the way for other women who are doing regenerative farming and ranching. ATF's Women for the Land Transformational Grants Program hopes to offer additional grants at the end of 2023 to support more pioneering women in agriculture like Ms. Morton. We are deeply grateful for the financial support of ATF is deeply grateful for the financial support of One Earth Philanthropy and Daughters for Earth for making the funding of that grant possible. And on a side note, we are very honored to have Ms. Morton here because she is the granddaughter of Mr. Horace Miller, who farmed the fields of Riverview Farm after Mr. Conley Greer passed away. Mr. Miller and Mr. Greer were friends, and Mr. Miller had farmed since 1916, and Ms. Morton still owns and farms that land. So we are very excited to have her here tonight. Just a couple of housekeeping items before we begin. This is being recorded and will be posted on our website in the next few days. And please mute yourself if you have not done so. And if you have questions, please put them in the chat box and we will answer those at the end of the presentation. Ms. Morton, I will now turn it over to you.
Well, happy Wednesday, everybody. It is a true pleasure to be with you this evening to speak about some of the work that I am involved in across the region. I'll give you a little bit. So currently I serve as your regional workforce director for the state of Virginia here in Earlsville. So I live in Earlsville, Virginia, and I work out of the workforce office for the state. So as you all know, there's 14 workforce boards in the state. And so being able to thread this body of work of agrarian into the workforce footprint has really been a remarkable experience and a great honor to be able to come back home and share some of my professional scholarship and help grow our community from that respect. As Susie mentioned, I am a founding board member of the Minority and Veteran Farmers of the Piedmont, which is a grassroots organization. We were founded in 2019 by a group of local minority farmers. And so when they asked me to be a part of that, I said, I'm only going to be a part of this if we define what minority is. And I said, it cannot be based on race. It has to be based on equal access for all. So no matter who you are, you can be a part of the organization and help us really address the need to sustain our small farmers and grow our small farmers. And so that was the initiative for me to be able to join this organization and co-found it so that we could implement a more sustainable and scalable agricultural practice across our region. I am a huge proponent for preserving farmland. I always said if I became a millionaire, I would buy up every farm I possibly could to convert them to learning labs or to help other young people, young generations to get into the farming industry. And we have to do a better job of educating and training individuals to get into the agrarian industry so that they understand. You know, I grew up, everybody said, oh, you're a farm girl. Oh, you like pigs and cows and all, you know, and people are so misled by that context and the stereotyping that farming is more than just cows, sows, and plows. My parents got me involved in 4-H at a very young age. I am a huge proponent of youth development organizations such as 4-H and FFA, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, etc., because it does provide the learning opportunity and a hands-on learning for young aspiring leaders. And it helps to build leaders, and it helps build that systematic approach of creating positive youth development to engage kids to get outside and understand the origin of their food. Many of our children and adults do not understand the origin of the food. Many people found that during COVID. And I can honestly say COVID really helped restore small farms. When people were going to the big box stores, they found that they were faced with control, limitations. And so nobody wants control of your food, right? You want the control of your own food and your own destiny. So I always start out, who has a relationship with your local farmer? And do you have a local farmer that you can call on to say, I have a need? Do you have? We have to go back to the days of my grandparents who have been farming since 1916. They farmed over 1,000 acres and sharecrop part of that. And we have to restore that. And food brings a sense of community. We don't have community anymore. And this is why I got involved with Minority Veteran Farmers of the Piedmont, is so that I could continue to build community through food. Food brings people together. I grew up, both sides of my family were farmers. My mother's side, which is the Miller, and my dad's side, which were the Mortons in Greene County. And so being a third generation farmer, I try to tell the story about agriculture is and connects everybody, and it is equal access for all. And we have to allow the food that doesn't see color, because when you're hungry, hunger doesn't entrap anyone, right? Hunger is for anybody that cannot make it. We're living in a very privileged community, and we have a lot of barriers that we have to help overcome. But what better way to do that is through food. And so if we can help teach people the origin of their food and how to farm and teach people skill development, then we can combat poverty in a matter of no time. We always have to engage in many studies. We have to spend all this money on studies. I tell people if they would give me a percentage of the money that has been spent on studies to me, then I can help combat poverty in less than a year, because it's all about skill development. And Minority and Veteran Farmers was founded on that premise. I can give you some stats, and then I'll talk and take you through some slides to show you some of our great work. Last year, we started a program, or actually it was 2 years ago, we started a program where we provided farmers. I would go out here and look for small grants to pay farmers a fair market value to provide their food to food banks. And I am now part of the Piedmont Action Coalition on Hunger. And I only joined that organization because it was a group of individuals that came together and said, we need to make sure that we can create food access. And this is in the northern, as you all know, the Piedmont region is broken into two planning districts, Planning District 10, which is everything from Greene to Nelson and everything in between. And then you have the Planning District 9, which goes from Madison up to Fauquier and Rappahannock. So when they asked me to be a part of the Piedmont Action Coalition on Hunger, I said, absolutely. But I'm going to put a disclaimer out here that it may offend some people and it may not. But I said, being a part of a food bank or a food closet or whatever you want to define it as, I said, it's great. However, those food banks are getting food that you and I don't want. That's not food equity. That's not food health. That's not food sovereignty. And so I'm not going to be a part of something that is going to provide unhealthy selection of food to low-income families. Just because you're at the bottom of the barrel doesn't mean you have to eat at the bottom of the barrel. And so I said, I will only join this group if I can help you all understand the need. You all get, most food banks get FEMA money and other money that comes in from other community foundations, et cetera. And I said, what better way than to keep your farmers in business? We have to ensure that we can't expect farmers to give their organic product to a food bank. So I started writing grants so that I could provide them micro grants to provide eggs and protein. Those are the two things that's missing when you go to a food bank. And when food banks have food, it's processed food. So just because you're low income or you're on a fixed income doesn't mean you need to eat bad and processed foods. So I said, you know what, we're going to mitigate this. So I got involved and we have started provide fresh and local food that's sourced from veterans, women, and minorities in this region to food banks. To date, we have touched over 3,000 families. This last year, we started last year sourcing to 2 food banks, and we touched over 3,000 families, and we provided over 15,000 pounds of food to the food banks in the northern Piedmont. I'm now trying to find grants that's in the southern Piedmont. So I was able to get these grants through community foundations, the Northern Piedmont, the PATH Foundation. I'm now trying to figure out where can I find the grants in this region so we can do the same thing in Charlottesville, so that we can pay these farmers to provide that food and those eggs. We're sourcing this weekend, I'm sourcing over 200 pounds of pork and beef and over 200 dozen of eggs to 15 churches in Orange County. So this is the volume of work that we're doing on a regular basis. We do food distribution on the 3rd Saturday of the month in Culpeper. We do food distribution on the 4th Saturday of the month in Orange, and we're trying to expand that. I've been working with Lehman Bates here in Charlottesville to try to help. Last year, we participated with his church and sourced over 5,000 pounds of food for his holiday giveaway, all sourced from minority farmers. And so that was huge. And so he has asked me to come along with him on this journey to help provide better access to food, fresh food from minority farmers in the Charlottesville or Planning District 10. So that's a little bit of the body of work that I've been involved in. Over the course of the 3 years that we have been formed, or 4 years, we have probably sourced over 50,000 pounds of food in the course of the 3 or 4 years we've been in business as a nonprofit. And so we really work hard to try to provide technical support, technical assistance to farmers, to new farmers, to women farmers, but also to provide hands-on experiential learning for young men and women who want to explore the agrarian industry. Many people don't look at the agrarian industry as, like I said, they think we're cows, sows, and plows. As you can see, my wonderful cows behind me. I love them daily. And I have pigs and goats too. But as I say to folks, everything that you touch is agriculture. From the clothing on your body, to the chairs that you sit in, to the food that we eat, to the medicines that we take every day, to, it's finance, it's agriculture, it's architecture, it's law, it's economics, it's everything. And so we can't get around that. And Virginia, that is our #1 revenue generating industry, $105 billion of revenue brought into the state of Virginia on a yearly basis. That's huge. And so I used to, before I came back to Charlottesville just 3 years ago, I used to run a program in Richmond through Virginia Tech. I worked in higher ed for 8 years, ran a program called Growing Science in Urban Community. As you all know, urban communities are plagued with food deserts, but don't let that be, that's a known fact. But we also have food deserts in our rural communities. And specifically when most of our rural families have to drive 15 or 20 miles to get to the grocery store. So we have food deserts across all communities. Don't let that fool you, because we have a lot of food deserts out here. How do we mitigate them? By developing mobile markets. Many people say, well, folks go to the market and they can't afford to buy the food. Well, it's no different when you go to the grocery store and you stand in line and you see what people have in their carts. Banquet chicken is just as expensive as buying the chicken from the farmer's market. Which is healthier? The farmer's market chicken. This is why many of our children are overdeveloped. There are a lot of hormones. There are a lot of different things in our food that's impacting the health of our children and our families. And so we have to go back of eating off the land and supporting the land and making sure we preserve our land, because the more we build houses, the less space you're going to have for food. And I keep telling folks, you keep building, putting concrete out here, you're going to eventually be eating out of a petri dish. And that is not going to be fun. And so when people start controlling and rationing your food, you're going to say, oh my goodness, I should have done something about it. And it's going to be a little too late. So we need to think about, how do we rally as a community to support our effort and saving our farmland, but also educating young men and women and aspiring leaders to think about, what could I do? What kind of career can I have in agriculture? We live in an academic town. Yes, we do. I went there, but I also went to Virginia Tech, and they both have something to offer. But not only that, we need technical training programs at our local community college that supports the agrarian industry. And so as I've been working through the workforce space and working with some of the local school systems, I've been saying, what's the #1 thing that's popping up everywhere? Breweries and wineries, viticulture, the art of winemaking. But it's really about grapes. And I said, wouldn't it be great to put a viticulture class at a high school and allow a student to get a science credit for that? That's chemistry, that's microbiology, that's physics, that's all of the above. And that child will then glean a wonderful experience in understanding fermentation and how to make grape juice, not wine, but grape juice, right? In the school system. And our school scores the kids would excel tremendously. But we've got to get to a space where we've got to rethink what our education model looks like and how we're educating parents and the community about our agrarian industry. We want to have all the pop-ups and the luxuries, but if you're eating out of a box, when you go to a fine restaurant here in Charlottesville, I can guarantee you the meat you're eating in there is not American-made beef. My history at USDA, I used to be a meat grader out in the Midwest, worked out there with USDA. The meat that Americans are eating is imported beef. Our beef is being exported. And so you are eating inferior meat is what I call it, because you don't know where it's coming from. I did hear that legislation is getting ready to change because they're now going to be requiring the origin of the meat and where it's coming from. But I can guarantee you, and I'll tell you a little story. I was in Richmond and I went to an Outback Steakhouse and I ordered a filet. It came out and I said, "Excuse me, but this isn't a filet. This is a sirloin." Well, the manager wanted to refute and dispute me up and down one side. And I said, "Excuse me, sir, but I'm a USDA meat grader." And his eyes went like, "What?" Right? And so I said, "This is a sirloin." I said, "A petite filet mignon is thick. It doesn't look like this." And I said, "Plus it's not tender. Fillets you can cut with your fork if it's cooked correctly." And so his eyes got big as quarters. I could have bought him for a dime. But I told him, it is important that you understand the cuts of meat that you're serving in your restaurants. And it's important for people to understand the meat that you are eating. Most people are passing off, there's two types of animals out here. You have dairy animals, you have beef animals. A lot, when you go to the Denny's or when you go to some of these low-end restaurants, most of the time, you're eating dairy cattle meat. You're not eating beef. So when you see steaks that's paper thin, that's dairy meat. That's not beef. So it's a difference. And so it's important for us to understand and educate the community about the services and what's out here and how it's impacting you and your families in the community. So I want to share with you some slides from the minority and veteran farmers of the Piedmont. I will not repeat this, but again, this is who we are. Can All right, so I was going to put this, let me fix this really quick. Okay. Can everybody see my screen? Okay, so this is the Minority and Veteran Farmers, again, grassroots organization. I will not read this to you. I don't believe in reading slides. I use it as a talking point. Can you hear me, Susie?
Yeah, Miss Morton, it's just it's like your files. It's not the.
Oh, hold on. Can you see that now?
There you go. That's great.
Okay, great. So I won't read this. I'm going to go through, talk a little bit about, but again, we foster the coaching, the technical skills training. We want to serve all communities. Again, as I preface, when I do my work in equity and diversity, I focus on equal access. I take the color out of my conversations because as I communicate about equity and equal access, it all comes to fruition. So you don't have to say, "Oh, well, you've disparaged against this one and that one." It automatically comes out in the conversation or dialogue as you start opening the door for safe space and safe conversations. So our vision statement is creating an awareness on the rural living and environmental benefits of our local food access and security. We want to ensure that we have strong families and communities across our region. And so as you can see, this was during our harvest season down. So many of you all may not know, but we operate out of the George Washington Carver Center in Rapidan, Virginia in Culpeper. That's where our hub is. But because I live in this area, I try to bring a lot of that body of work up here. We have over 4 acres and 2 greenhouses that we promote the education and training on down there. Last year, we raised turmeric, peanuts, sweet potatoes, and cotton. Many people think because we're in a very clay area, we weren't able to grow the peanuts or the cotton. But as you all know, when we're down on George Washington Carver's land, anything is possible. So, and it's really interesting. If you've never been to Carver, you should go and understand the history there. The Carver Center was an African-American school in the Culpeper Arena in that area, and the land was owned by an African-American farmer back in the day. So it's pretty quite telling to see that opportunity there. These are some of our goals. We want to mitigate the attrition of small farms. We want to provide and engage women farmers to be a part of our organization. We want to also develop strategies and outreach efforts that will help bring more people into our organization to help us with this body of work. And how do we get more of this services in the Southern Piedmont, because we're very heavily penetrated in the Northern Piedmont, but how do we get folks in the Southern Piedmont to be a part of this? You know, I often hear when I came back home, oh, Sarah, are you part of this food hub and that food hub? And I'm like, I get people are trying to create these food hubs, but are we really building the synergy and creating a system approach to food access and food hubs in our area? And that's, you know, I'm beginning to learn about some of these in the area, but honestly, I'm one of these individuals. If we're not going to be action oriented, then I can't be a part of it, because I hate to have meetings to discuss meetings to determine when the next meeting is going to be. Don't like to do that. I'm truly action oriented when it comes to this body of work and all body of work, because I believe the more we talk, the less work gets done. But the more action we put out there, we really can show people that it doesn't take years to get something moved. It doesn't take months to get something passed. If you've got a force and you have people who are committed to the body of work, it can be done in a short period of time. We have to be ready to address. Are we really ready to address issues, or do we really want to just talk about the issues and put band-aids on them? And so I'm one of these action-oriented individuals who wants to have objectives. I like to have goals and understand what the collective impact is going to be on the community and households. So as you can see, these are some of our collaborative efforts. We do collaborate with the Small Farm Outreach Program at Virginia State University. I did share with Miss Susie Farmer that we would be willing to help support her farm day out in October that she's trying to plan. We're also building a database of minority farmers. We've worked with the local food hub and working with Brianna Stevens to help build out this database of minority farmers. Many of you might not know, but we used to have over 16 million minority farmers nationwide. We're now down to 16,000, and Virginia has less than 1,600. All because there were some poor practices put out there by several of our federal agencies that stole the land from many of our minority farmers. Many of you may not know this, but back in the day, most farmers would not register their land because if they did, the people would take their deeds. And so most of them put their family, their land plats, all of their deeds, everything, they stored them in their houses or in their mattresses because they could not trust the localities because they would take their land. Some of our community engagement, so we collaborate with American Farmland Trust, we collaborate with USDA, Friends of the Rappahannock, which is an environmental group. We have several homeschool cohorts we support, food closets, food pantries. We are working with Virginia Career Works, which is the organization that I head up as executive director, and trying to help build food resiliency, but also the food sovereignty here in our area. Helping to get families to understand what conservation easements are and why is it important to put your family land in easements, because it does preserve our land and provide opportunities for others. Here's some of our board members. All of these are farmers. As you all know, this is Dr. Jewel Brunel. She served as the Deputy Secretary under the U.S. Department of Agriculture under Tom Vilsack. She's since stepped down from her role. Formerly, she used to be the dean at Virginia State University, and she used to also be the executive director of Virginia's Farm Service Agency. So this is some of our field days where we had at the Carver Center talking about some of the things. This is where we had a corn plot growing, and we harvested several different species of corn. as this is the time we engage families to come out. We have a farm tour every September. We partner with Culpeper on, so I do encourage you all to come out and to be a part of that tour and just go around to different farms in the Culpeper area. But then maybe that's something we can get going in this area, because there are a lot of great farms in the southern Albemarle County area. Land stewardship is something that we also foster at Carver. So we have a lot of, we do potato beds up there where we use straw, we're using hay or straw to grow potatoes. So we don't have to put them in the ground. We have blackberries, blueberries. We have a herb garden. We have a young lady who makes candles and soap out of the herbs that's grown in the garden there. So we have a lot of opportunity up there. These are some of the vegetables that we were able to collect from our greenhouses up there at Carver. And these are our many partners and collaborator there. So as you can see, we have a lot of different partners and farmers in which we partner with across the region. Several of them are the people who provide, the farmers that provide the food and the protein for our farmers in the northern Piedmont region. And these are just some great photos that we've done there at Carver, meeting with the Virginia State Small Farm Outreach as they look to build out. They're putting a central kitchen up there, which is the George Washington Food Enterprise Center. So we're really involved in that and building that out. I'm also helping a group in Green to start a homesteaders co-op so that we can teach people how to preserve, how to can, how to make jelly, how to freeze, and all different types of food preservation. So I'm working with a group in Green right now to try to get a homesteads group going, because the National Homesteaders Group is coming to Front Royal this year. So that's a little bit about MVFP. I'll stop there, take some questions before I continue. This is some of our outreach. We maintain gardens at one of the local schools in Madison and in Culpeper. So we're in the community throughout. One of the things that I'd love to see here in Charlottesville is how we can help some of the housing communities here to grow container gardens, or how do we help work with the park system to have edible parks so that people can always walk through a park and put, can we put fruit trees there? Can we put berry bushes? Can we put grapevines in there? So how do we convert some of this park space into edible green space? So I'll take some questions before I continue. Any questions? You guys are quiet.
Kim, go ahead and unmute yourself. She raised her hand.
Yeah. Thanks so much for this presentation. Last month, or I think it was last month, when they had the other gentleman that was the farmer in the community speak, I had asked the question about the whether or not private equity is creeping into Virginia in terms of trying to take over farms or have an influence in farms. Or are you able to really have your farming enterprises managed locally?
So most of our farmers in this area are farmed by they're privately owned by the farmer themselves. So they're not, I'll just use this example. It's not Tim Bezos buying 3 farms in Northern Virginia and having somebody farm it for them. Everybody that we work with own their own farms.
And they're deciding the types of crops to grow, or the variety of the crop, or the, whatever the local interest is.
Whatever the local interest, whatever the new niche, I can tell you the traditional way of farming, and I'll just use our family farm as an example. So when we took over our family farm after my father passed away, we did an assessment and we said, what is the common variables that we have on the farm and how do we take that to another level? We had land, we had a homestead, we had cattle. So I said to my brother, let's convert to an Airbnb. Let's take the livestock and convert that now to grass-fed beef. And so that's how we started adding new niches. When my brother retired from the military, who was a disabled veteran of 22 years, he came back home and we used horticultural therapy to help him with his PTSD. And so I took him down to Virginia State University to introduce him to their blackberry production. He fell in love with it. Being a farmer with a traumatic brain injury was the best thing I could have ever done for him, is exposed him to the horticultural therapeutic piece that he needed. Because I can tell you, I'm a huge proponent of our military services, but they do not do a great job of helping our veterans transition, specifically disabled veterans. And so had it not been for my involvement with him, I don't know what the outcome would have been for my brother. And so exposing him to that berry production was really a life-changing, altering opportunity for him, because we then started putting in the berries. And so he kind of takes that and that's his baby. And so he's now evolved that into vegetable gardens. We've now started looking at raspberries. I've now started at my own little small farm in Earlsville on my grandparents' farm. I'm raising blueberries. And so we are just supporting this whole effort. Horticultural therapy is huge. We also have at the Carver Center, we have the herb garden where we have provided a lot of different herbs. We go everything from sage to rosemary to eucalyptus to lavender, lemon balm, you name it, we have it out there, because we're trying to get the veterans and any family that are suffering from PTSD or any mental illness to just come out there and be in that space where there's herbs and flowers and, you know, that whole being in the space, because again, land doesn't judge, right? The land doesn't talk back. So you're able to immerse yourself into that space and really feel the healing of the land as you work through that. So it's pretty empowering. And so that was one of the things that I did for him. From that, we now have expanded into multiple enterprises. So we now have the grass-fed beef. He wanted to get into pork. He was like, let's go back into the pork business. So I said, sure. So now we do pasture-raised pork. We do free-range birds. His children are now into goats. So we raise Spanish goats. And so we have multiple different enterprises that drives that farm, and that farm takes care of itself. Whereas before, my father was just selling livestock on the hoof. You know, you sell your cows and you pay your taxes at the end of the year. But it is now a fluid operation that is now paying for itself. And the Airbnb pays for itself and the farm continues to pay for itself. The farm is paid off, but we're continuing to build the infrastructure for the next generation. And we are now we are going through the conservation easement so that we can coach other farmers. Right now, there's only one minority farmer that has their land on a conservation easement. And that's because of that mistrust, because they think someone's going to take them. But we're willing to go through the process so we can coach people through conservation easements.
In Albemarle County or which?
Ours is going to be in Greene County.
So just the Piedmont area. Okay.
Right. But once we go through the training, I'm happy to go and coach and train people on what this truly means and why you should put your land in a conservation easement. Because we do need to preserve the land.
Yes, it does need to be preserved. I grew up in Pennsylvania and I get sad every time I drive up to Pennsylvania on 81 and see all the farms that have gotten sold off and have logistics centers on them.
And you know, it's because many of the children of the previous farmers, they did not see the benefit of like with me. I went off, but I came back home. And so when I came back home, I said, I'm going to take my family farm to another level. Many of our children don't want to come back and do the hard work, but what can you get involved in? Again, like I said to my brother, with us raising the grass-fed beef, we're not out there, you know, slumping in the mud and things. We're raising the animals for meat, right? So you can monitor your day. You can monitor your activities. You don't have to be out there 24/7. So it's all about picking the niche and understanding. As I said to him, I don't understand why more people aren't getting into aquaculture. Farm fresh shrimping. Think about it. That's a huge business. We have to go to the sea to get shrimp or seafood, but wouldn't it be great to have farm fresh shrimp right here in your back door to have access to? And so, it's all about helping people to think innovatively and creatively about new opportunities and enter into this space. Right now, you hear people talking about agrospheres, like growing in the, that's hydroponics, that's aquaponics. But because we live in an academic town, we have to call it agrospheres. It has to be this fancy name. It's still agriculture, folks. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we have to, we're living in a world that we have to impress. We don't. Because when it comes to food, I don't care if you have a PhD, an EDD, an MD. If you're hungry, you're going to find food to eat. You don't care where you get it from, right? So we've got to peel the onion back on this whole privilege piece, right? Let's take that down. Let's dismantle that and understand, what do we do? We want to provide affordable housing here in Charlottesville, but why provide affordable housing if we're not going to provide opportunities for affordable eating? Somebody had a question. Kim.
Sorry, you're so right. I'm just speechless. Sorry. All right, Ms. Morton. Dolores had a question, and then we'll get to Mr. Brooks.
Kim had her hand up too, I think.
Okay. I think you just answered Kim's question.
I'll just be really, really quick. So I'm new here. We came down from the Hudson Valley of New York, where we just had our last dairy farm close in Dutchess County. And people are trying to, pull farms back from the abyss. I say every housing development has apple trees because it used to be an apple orchard.
That's right.
Do you offer any educational things for home farmers, not like mini small farms? Like,
yeah, sure. So we offer opportunities. We partner with different organizations to say, if you want, say you want to do something for bee pollinators, say you want to start, preserving our beehives, or if you're into, we have one young lady who she makes, we're doing a class on forage jellies. So like rose petal jelly, violet jelly, where we're using the different rose petals, they boil it, they break, I can't explain it, but the homesteaders are doing it. It's amazing. And so we offer small technical training opportunities, and we're happy to partner with Susie to run these classes out there at the farm, or, we could do different things. So we partner with a lot of different organizations to come in and talk about pruning, how to start your own. Everybody goes out. This is the time we're going to Lowe's, we're going to Tractor Supply. Oh, I want an apple tree, I want a plum tree. Well, you need to have 2 plums, because you can't have 1 plum tree because it's not going to pollinate unless it's a self-pollinator, right? So, these are the things that we're happy to coach. We can also talk about how to do container gardening. I started my blueberries in a water trough. I went to Tractor Supply. I got one of those flat black water troughs. I created my soil medium to make sure it was a low acidic, a 5 or below. I put my blueberries in there, and guess what? My berries fruited the first year. So, it's those types of things. I mean, I'm growing turmeric and ginger in a root bag. You can buy root bags and put your stuff in them. You can bring them in, you can take them out. So we're happy to come out and do trainings and have series over there with Susie, if that's something that you all would love to see.
that'd be good, Susie.
I would love to see that. Yes. So Dolores asks, where do most of your grants come from?
So in the northern Piedmont, I generally apply for grants either through the Prince Charitable Trust. We work with the Agua Fund. We work with the Path Foundation, the Northern Piedmont. And so a lot of the work, the grants that we go after, the money and the food has to be in that northern corridor. But I'm trying to come this way. And I know the Charlottesville has a community foundation, but their mission is a little different here. You know, it's not, I mean, when you go up to Northern Virginia, it's all about food resiliency. It's all about helping seniors and children and making sure people have food access and health equity, and all of that ties back to food. And so I started talking with them. And so the Path Foundation says, oh my God, where have you been? We need you. So I just started writing grants, and they give us the grants to do this body of work. And we give, you know, $2,500, $3,000 grants to farmers and say, look, I need you to provide so many pounds of meat for so many months to this person. And that's what they do. We pay $5.85 for eggs. We pay $8 a pound for their meat. I mean, so they're making a decent price on their product. And we can't expect them to give away their organic meat for free to a food bank. So what I do is I generally go to the Virginia Department of Agriculture and Consumer Service. I pull down markets that's similar to our area, and I pull an average of 5 markets, and that's how I come up with the cost to pay the producer. So if you all know of some, you know, if you all know of some grants, let me know, because we're happy to provide the food to this area as well. If you belong to churches and you have missionary funds, to say, what a great, I always say this, what a great way to do missionary work. Why do we need to go over to a third world country? Why do we need to go overseas when we have missionary work that needs to take place right here in our own community?
Mr. Brooks? You're muted, Ed.
Hi, good evening, Ms. Morton. Very fascinating conversation. I'm a program coordinator at the B.F. Yancey School Community Center in Esmont, which is Southern Albemarle. And, you know, school was closed in 2017, but we have multiple agencies in the building, and a community garden and a food pantry. And Ms. Dolores Dyer there is one of the volunteers in that, for which we're very happy. I was intrigued by you saying that the beef from American cattle are sold, exported, and we're imported. Were you speaking of the grass-fed beef?
Your beef in general.
Beef in general. And I'm just like, so it's actually, it's more profitable to sell it exported.
American beef is like platinum.
Okay.
And so I'll give you an example. You see the cows in my picture here. Those are our cows. So when they have calves, we don't sell them. We raise our animals on the farm, we butcher them. But if we were to sell, when we used to sell them on the hoof, they go to the sale barn, right? To the in Madison or wherever you sell your animals. From there, they're hauled on a truck. You'll see these big stock trailers on the highway and tractor trailers, where they're being trucked either to Pennsylvania, they're trucked to the Midwest to go into a feed yard. If you've ever traveled out in the Midwest, you'll see these big thousands of acres of feed yards with thousands of head of animals in there. And you'll see different pens. And so you'll have a pen that's 500 for 500-pound steers. You have a pen for 1,000-pound steer. You have a pen for 1,200 pounds. That 1,200 pounds then going to be put on a truck and brought to me at the packing house. So the packing house will then slaughter that animal, because that animal is so valuable in terms of the quality of our meat. Think about it. We have plush green grass, right? The feed, the grain, everything. The majority of our food is being exported overseas, okay? So our beef is like platinum to Japan, to China. They want our beef, they want our pork. So we're getting meat that's being brought in from Brazil, from Argentina. We used to get it from Canada, but we no longer get it from Canada now. So these are the things that folks are not aware of in America. I know it because I was a meat grader for USDA.
Right. Yeah. The second question is that, without community garden, it has been very difficult to get a sustainable volunteer base. And we have what I call a recreational community garden because it's next to a playground, and we're not totally really fastidious about how you plant it and all those things. But It's been difficult because I grew up in a community where, you know, everyone had a little garden. Some people were growing cows and different things like that, but that's just no longer there. And we work with the Boys and Girls Club for coming in, and we have some very enthusiastic students that, you know, like they've never done anything gardening, but, you know, I'm just wondering, how do you get it back where, you know, people do know that their grandparents, you know, had a few cows, and nobody did this full time, but, you know, you could see cows, and my uncles had hogs, and nobody was really selling, you know, corn or anything like that on any sort of scale other than to feed the animals. But, you know, that whole concept of becoming a farmer that actually has profitable gain, you know, that's the part where you were sharing about, you know, how much money are you putting in your pocket today if you're trying to convince somebody that you should take up farming, whether it's a serious, as they call it, serious side hustle, or are we really doing this?
So I can tell you, so I'll be transparent. So our farm is self-sustaining. And so we have my brother who's retired veteran. So none of us pull a paycheck, but we do have staff that work for us. We have gardeners that maintain the gardens. We have landscapers. We have housekeeper that comes in and maintains the homestead, which is the inn. So again, we have multiple enterprises. So we have the beef side of the house. We have the Airbnb side of the house, and they both take care of each other. We don't have to come out of our pocket for anything. All the money that is brought in all the revenue goes right back into infrastructure. So we're constantly looking at new niches. Now, did we get there overnight? No, because we took our parents' ag legacy, which was hobby farming. And so we took that 150-acre farm and now turned it into a major production farm. And so it's small scale. We don't need 1,000 acres to be successful, right? It's all about looking at the new niches, looking at the diversification. And so what do you do? What do you have to work with, right? We had a family property there. We weren't going to turn it into a rental, because when you do that, there's a whole lot more work you have to get done. So the Airbnb was the right way to go. And so we, we invested in that, we remodeled it, and we made it, and it stays busy. Then we partnered with some of the agencies. We partnered with the Natural Conservation, NRCS, Natural Resource Conservation Service, to help us fence off our waterways. So it was a phased approach. So as my brother would say, and everybody has a craft in my family. So I manage all the back office. I do the grant writing. I go out and I look for the resources that help us move to another level. My brother is the doer. He's the farm manager. He does everything as it relates. Now we consult with one another because I've got an animal science background. My sister, who's into interior design. So everybody has a niche there. My brother is a culinary arts person. So when we have festivals, he's the one that's providing all of the food. He does all the prepping. We do the farm fresh field of fork experiences. So we do all of that there. So everybody's got a craft and we put the money right back in there. Nobody pulls a paycheck. So, but to your first point, so to your question about the children, when I worked for Virginia Tech, I started a project that was part of my PhD program, and I researched it for 8 years. But I started a program called Growing Science in Urban Communities. And as you all know, in Richmond, there's 8 housing communities. I don't like to say projects because everybody has a community, whether you're wealthy or you're poor. And so I worked in 8 housing communities. But before I could design a program, because I picked up a program that was not successful, had not helped any children, nothing. And it's over 24,000 kids in the city of Richmond, in the school system. So I said, what can I do with these children? So before I said, you have to do a situation analysis to understand what I'm working with, who I'm working with. And so I took my evenings and I rode through these neighborhoods, and I just sit in the car and just people watch, right? I'd walk down the streets and I just people watch, And so I gleaned several things from those children. I gleaned that when you go into an urban community, what's the first thing you see in those children's mouth early in the morning? They have a bag of hot fries and a soda in their hand, right? They have earphones on their ears. They're dressed to the nines and they're carrying a basketball. So I said, they love food, they love to dress, they love music, and they love sports. How are those four components tied to agriculture? Food is culinary or hospitality, or food chemistry. Clothing is textiles, cotton, polyester, leather. Music comes from instruments that's made from wood, which comes from our harvesting of the woods. And the basketball comes from the hide of the pig or the cow. And so I tied that, those four things I gleaned ignited passion, it stimulated them to learn, and it motivated them. So I designed programs. I designed a textiles program. I designed a food chemistry program. They did leather working, and I designed a videography program. And so with that, and I added more hydroponics, animal science, because kids love animals, they have pets. So I had this 8-series program, ran it for free, wrote a grant, got a grant. It was a $2 million grant, ran it for 8 years. And from the findings, what I found is when students have voice and choice in learning, they will excel. When students have a caring adult, a safe space for learning, it creates a sense of belonging, it creates a sense of generosity and a sense of independence. All of those are key components of positive youth development. And many of these children did not have structure at home, but they came to this institute that we ran from 9 to 3, Monday through Thursday, and we took field trips on Friday so that they could connect what they were learning to real life. I would bring in food from the farm and allow them to cook it. So one day I brought in chicken. And so the teacher in the food chemistry class said, we're going to make chicken nuggets today. They were like, chicken nuggets? She said, yeah, we're not looking at McDonald's chicken nuggets today. We're going to make them. So she said, what do we have in the kitchen that we can make the crumbs with? And they were just like, well, we need flour. She was like, no. So they had their snack there, which was goldfish. So she said, let's just beat these goldfish up and make them into crumbs. She said, now we're going to learn knife skills and learn to cut up the chicken nuggets. So they got involved and she said, now we need the, olive oil so we can deep fry them. So we used the technical center because 1, I was promoting careers in the trades industry. 2, I wanted to expose them to career and technical education because most people think that's only for blue collar worker and it isn't. And 3, they were able to do hands-on learning. So they came back and they made these chicken nuggets. And boy, when I went back down there, I said, so tell me about these chicken. They was like, man, Miss Morton, these are the best chicken nuggets we ever. We going home and tell our mama we don't want no more McDonald's chicken nuggets. We want to make our own. But again, a skill. When you teach a child a skill, you can combat poverty. And so that child was able to take home that skill to his or her family. I had another young lady who came into me, and this was the most gut-wrenching thing I could have ever experienced. So I had ordered this long ream of 4-H fabric, and I said, you guys are going to learn to make, pillows or whatever today. So they made pillows. So I had this young, and that program was for 7 to 13-year-olds. The 7-year-old comes into me and says, Miss Sarah, she said, Miss Sarah, I said, yes, honey. May I make more pillows? Because we don't have pillows in my house. Well, that just tore me to pieces. Simple things that we take for granted and many of our children do not have. I said, you go in there and you make as many pillows as you want for your family. And let me tell you, she was a little champ because she went in there and she got to sewing. And she made pillows for everybody in her household, which was very powerful. And so it's about, that's the kid. She will never forget that a day in her life. So then I said to the teacher, take them to the local Goodwill store. And I gave them the money. I said, and let them buy jeans, or they can bring in jeans if they want. So everybody was talking about the jeans, these $100 jeans that people wear that's faded and got holes in them. And, they paying all this crazy money. I said, you know what? You're going to make your own jeans like that. So they would bring their own jeans and we take them to the Goodwill. They come in, we got them razor blades, we got them knives, we got them scissors, and we got bleach. And they made their own jeans. So it's all about how to repurpose. And these kids today, some of them have gone on and majored in ag. Some of them have, one young man is majored in architectural design with the focus on landscape architect. One young lady's gone on. She just got accepted to Cornell into their environmental science program. I mean, just amazing things that they've done because of the experience. The last thing that I did was I chartered a bus and took 40 children and took them around the state to teach them about the agrarian industry. And we started out in Richmond and we went all the way around the state of Virginia, a whole week on a bus with these children and some of their parents. And boy, it was a task, but it was one of the most life-changing. They saw greenhouses for red sun down in Pulaski County. They saw Agriberry Farms, which is a female farmer down in Hanover County. We went to White House applesauce. They said, we going to the White House to see applesauce? I said, you going to White House applesauce. Your little mott cups, we're going to go see how that's made. We went to Route 11 potato chips. We met the owner of Route 11 potato chips. They got to see how the potato chips were made. From there, we went to the producer who provided the potatoes and grew the potatoes for Route 11 potato chips. It was the most amazing, and parents even said, Miss Morton, we didn't know any of this stuff existed. But again, it was an eye opener. It was an expensive trip, $25,000 up, but we also took them to restaurants to teach them how to eat, to teach them what kind of conversations, the whole etiquette. So it was a wonderful program. But I go back to say all that, you have to figure out what stimulates them, what motivates them, and what ignites passions. From there, you design your program around that, and they will come. I had parents say, man, we need you to be the superintendent of the school. I said, no, ma'am, you don't. Man, we need you to help. Why can't we have these programs in school? I said, talk to your school board members. I said, because this is how you combat poverty. From that point on, I established my personal brand that I was put here to engage, educate, and empower communities to look at ways that we can combat poverty. And the way we do that is through skill development.
Thank you so much. Yeah, you fight poverty with skills and trades. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yep. Other questions?
Miss Morton, would you mind expanding? By the way, you are awesome. I just
Well, thank you.
Would you mind expanding on, you were talking about how you fence off the river from your pastures, and some folks on this call may not know why you would do that or why that's important. So would you mind expanding on that just a little bit?
Yeah, so there's legislation coming down the pike that anybody who have farms that have creeks or water streams on them, it'll flow into the James River, which then flows into your bay. So they're asking for stream exclusion. And so if you have cattle on there, they're asking farmers to fence off those waterways to keep the cows out of there from depositing their manure and feces in that water, which goes down. And as you all know, you'll see on the highway, there's a big trucker. You might see these green signs in people's road on yards that says biosolids. Everybody know what that is? Biosolids is human waste. It's being trucked in to put on these farms. Well, I'm totally against that because you're taking, even though that it's quote unquote been processed, is it really being processed? Look at what's happening up there in Pennsylvania with the derailment of the train. They're saying there's nothing wrong with the soil, but years to come, there's going to be something wrong with the soil. Same thing with biosolids. I am not a proponent of biosolids, but the fencing of the water streams is critical because we do not want to continue to contaminate the bay or the river. And so we got into that. They have a shares program, We got in it when it was 100%. So they paid 100% of our fencing off all of our waterways, and they provided us a well so that we could put the automatic waterers on them so the cows can draw the water out of from the well versus from the creek. So that's what the water exclusion. And I think the legislation is that by 2026, I believe, is that everybody is supposed to have, if not, you'll be faced with the fine.
And that's beneficial for so many activities. You know, we are increasing our tourism of the rivers. You know, our drinking water comes from the rivers.
Absolutely.
So thank you for expanding on that.
Other questions?
This isn't really a question, but as you were talking about your work with those kids and bringing food in from the farm to teach them how to cook it, it reminded me of Mrs. Mary Carr Greer, because, you know, Mr. Greer was the extension service agent, or the first African-American extension service agent, but Mrs. Greer, who lived on Riverview Farm, her father founded it. She was a home economics teacher at Albemarle Training School, which was one of the segregated schools here in Albemarle County. And she had a huge kitchen garden, and she used to take food from her kitchen garden to the school and teach the kids how to cook it and then provide them a healthy meal. And so your story just reminded me of her and how that work is still happening even today. So.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's going to continue. And, you know, we have to fight to put these trades back into the school systems. I mean, I tell people all the time, shoe cobblers, where can you go get a shoe fixed today? Seamstress, where can you find a good tailor today? You can't. And so these are things that we need, and it's all part of the agrarian industry. I mean, you're going to the store and you're paying a couple $100 for a decent suit, but if we had tailors here, people could make you a suit, you know, but because there's such a shortage, that's why we're paying so much for everything. I mean, you look at hardscapes today, you know, you look at your plumbers, you look at your electricians, the average age of a farmer now is like 60 some years old. And many of their children don't want to follow behind them, but they need to teach the children, what can you take from where I'm stopping and how can you evolve that into the next phase of our family business? But children today don't want to put in that hard, intense labor. And so I can tell you, my niece and nephew, we got them involved in 4-H at the age of 5 and 6. So they started showing goats and pigs at the age of 6. I'll give you a perfect example. My nephew last year, he turned 7. He showed a steer at the county fair, and he sold a steer for $5.50 a pound. He's 6 years old. So it's all about entrepreneurship. It's all about, the one young man sold his steer for $7 a pound. So it's all about entrepreneurship and how we're expanding that. I'll give you one last scenario that I did with the children in Richmond. The program that I did, everybody loved tennis shoes, right? You know, Mr. Brooks, you probably can relate to this with the kids out there at your community center. They love their tennis shoes. So I said, we're going to do a quick math lesson. I said, how many of you guys own this, you know, Airs or whatever the shoe was? They raised their hand. And I said, so couple things. How many of y'all own a $1,000 cell phone in your hand? They raised their hand. I said, okay, take it out. It's a computer. I said, who is the CEO of Nike? Where is the headquarters for Nike? How much is the Nike stock? And what kind of jobs does Nike have? So I made them do that. So they did it. And I said, so at the time, and I had a classroom full of kids, it was like $5,000 worth of shoes in the room, right? I said, so, and how many of y'all's mother sacrificed the electric bill to buy them tennis shoes? And they all looked at one of them and started giggling. I said, yeah, I'm telling you the truth. So they pulled it out. I said, now let's do the math. I think at the time they had, the stock was $70 some or whatever. I said, so let's do some math. And they did the math. And I said, so how much stock can you own with this $5,000? So they did the math. And one kid said, man, I'm going to tell my mama, I'm going to buy me some stock. I don't want these tennis shoes. I said, absolutely right. I said, own the company and not the shoe. And the kid said to them, he said, I'm going home to tell my mama, we don't want no more tennis shoes. We want to buy the stock. I said, that's right, because then you can dictate on what you sell them shoes for. And so being able to make it real life. But again, I was pulling a theme that grasped their attention and made learning easy because it was relatable. And so that's what it's, and I said, how many of y'all know that those tennis shoes is made out of pig skin? No, they're not. I said, yes, sir. I said, how many of y'all knew that everybody liked Coach? They raised their hand. I said, Coach is made out of pig skin. So being able to relate it back to something that they can connect to is all about igniting that passion for learning and exposing them to it.
I just wanted to say I put the website for your organization in the chat box if anyone else wanted to check it out. And Ms. Morton, if you have any other websites you'd like to share with folks, feel free to throw those in the website.
Absolutely. I'm going to put the VDAX. I think this is a great play. You want to teach a quick, if you're in church and you want to teach quick lessons, this is the VDAX to educate your communities on, we export to China, Canada. You'll see, I'll show this to you really quick. I'll share my screen real quick. Can everybody see that? So yeah. China's #1 country we export to. These are the countries that we export all of our agricultural products to. And so, it's just really important for us to be able to see what's out there, everything on here, VDAX, great website. You can click on facts and figures. It talks about, in Virginia, we have already 41,000 farms, 7 million acres. It gives you some quick facts that you can look at, some different studies. Virginia agricultural commodities. Our #1 commodity in the state of Virginia is broilers, then it goes to cow-calves. 90% of Virginia's beef cattle comes out of Southwest Virginia. Over $26 million of cattle come out of Southwest Virginia on a yearly basis. Shenandoah Valley is the hub of our broilers and our turkeys, milk products. So this just gives you our commodities list. But it really is good information, the markets, different markets out here. So I would encourage you just to peruse this website to educate yourself about our ag industry and share it with the people in your communities, your professional and your personal cohorts. I think it's the more we can educate each one, teach one, I think it's important.
Thank you. Kim?
Yeah, I had another question though regarding the exporting of some of our agricultural commodities. Has it really translated as globalization has accelerated? Has it really translated though to farmers truly benefiting from that export trade, or is it?
Farmers are being ripped off.
I was gonna say it's mostly a lot of the middlemen that are the ones who are really making out. It's not really the farmer. I mean, they get a market, they get a stable market, but they're not necessarily getting the higher valued price that platinum.
So prime example, beef prices right now are sky high, right? And the livestock on the hoof, they're selling for $2, $2.60 a pound, but that's on the hoof. So if I'm selling you, a 1,800 pound steer at $2.60, I'm gonna make $4,000. But when I take that steer into that packing facility and get it harvested, look at how many cuts it's gonna come. So, you take 1,800 pound steer, you might yield about 1,000 pounds of meat, maybe. So you take that 1,000 pounds of meat and they may be selling that meat, depending on what the cut is, $26, $30, $40 a pound to China. You see what I'm saying? So the farmer only got $2.60. And so we need to mitigate these acquisitions. You know, you have the JBS, which is the Brazilian brothers who got caught for corruption. So we really have to really communicate to legislators. And this is, again, this goes back to your political arena. It doesn't matter if you're Democrat, Republican, whatever you are. At the end of the day, you got to save the food that we're eating. And so we need to be communicating people who's going to advocate for the right thing. Get in there and tell them, stop these acquisitions so that our own farmers can survive and that our own Americans can eat our beef as opposed to sending it overseas.
And we can buy beef from you, right, Ms. Morton? You sell
You
beef?
can, Cattle Run Farm, yep. And we sell at the Ix Market and we sell at the Greene County Farmers Market. We also have an online store, but we also take private clients on the farm as well.
Awesome. Do you sell, this is just me asking, but other people might be interested. Can you purchase like a half of the steer, or can you do like the whole thing?
So what we try to encourage families to do, we sell box beef. So we sell a 25 pound, a 50 pound, we sell a 75 pound. And you can get beef and pork, you can mix it up. And so we encourage that because a half and a whole, unless you have a large family, that's a lot of meat. I know because I support the local livestock sales here. And so I bought a steer last year, and I'm just a family of one, and I'll never eat 80 pounds of meat. And that's what, because I split it with someone else. I'm like, I won't eat 80 pounds of meat. But I encourage people to buy box beef. It's cheaper, and you can get a variety. And we have a barbecue box, a harvest box. So I just didn't, if you want it, you can reach out to us on our website. And we're happy to.
What's your website?
Cattle Run Farm, LLC @gmail.com.
Oh. I was typing.
So, yeah, my wife works with a summer program, well, a year round. It's called the Star Hill Pathways under the UVA Equity Center. And she works with Sharika Jones-Lewis, who's from Madison County. I don't know if you know her, but anyway, she's always serving lunches, and they do a lot of in-service programs when the school systems are out. And she tries to get food from many different local restaurants to serve. And, it's all good, but just tonight, it's just been great that you've been talking about grass-fed beef is from an African-American business. Is there any way that, like during the summer, if they were to have one of their events and they go for 6 weeks, that you could get that food from farm to table and you would actually talk to them, because they serve lunches outside of some of these other periods, but she just she uses the restaurants. Yeah.
We could come in and do a taco bar. We could come in and using the meat from the vegetables from the farm, we raise Swiss chard so they could have tacos made out of Swiss chard, instead of using the tortilla, you can just roll it up in the Swiss chard and have taco and cheese. And it's like, so we could come in and do a taco bar. We can invite them to the farm, and, depending on how many kids, we can invite them out there and serve them the food right off the farm and do a field of fork experience. I mean, we hosted kids for 4-H out there, and they were going through the garden, picking carrots and eating. They were like, can we eat this? I said, sure you can. But, and that's another thing. Our children, our nieces and nephew grew up on the farm. They did not have any issues with COVID, but, when you're in the dirt, and you're part of the system, you build up an immune system, and, you have the clean air, and you have, so it's just, the agrarian industry, if we continue to pollute it, we're all going to be sick. But we've got to work together to save it.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm happy. We're having a farm festival on our farm. May 13th is the weekend of Mother's Day, and we did it because most people are probably going to be looking to bring their children out or get out to do something with their mothers. And
Mhm.
so I just encourage you guys, if you're out and about, stop by Cattle Run Farm in Ruckersville, Virginia. I'm going to see if I can't find the flyer and put it in chat for you.
Ed, would you like me to connect you and Miss Morton via email?
Yes, that would be great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So let me see if I can. We're going to have live music and a band out there. So bring your families and come on out. And we try to partner and get, last year we gave away over $250 worth of gift cards to grocery stores. And we had gift cards to the farm for people to buy, come out and buy meat. So come on out.
Miss Morton, if you want to email me that flyer, I can put that on our social media account as well.
I will send that over to you. I was trying to, this one might be better to post. Put in the chat. Let me do that. So those who registered for the event, but do come out. We'll have a food truck and we'll be showcasing the food off of the farm. And the pictures, post this if it lets me. Oh, here's the flyer, but I'll send it to Susie. But all of these products came off our farm. So these are the beets, these are our eggs, these are our tomatoes, these are our blackberries. But I'll share this with you, Susie.
Thank you. All right, well, it is almost 8 o'clock and I want to respect your time and everyone else's time. And I want to thank you so much for doing this talk tonight. It has been so interesting and so informative and just really great. And so thank you, Miss Morton, and thank you everyone that attended tonight. I hope you all enjoyed it as much as I did and you learned a lot. If you have not been out and visited Ivy Creek Natural Area and Historic Riverview Farm, I hope you will soon. Her great-grandfather farmed that land for a little bit, so come check it out. Our next Ivy talk, not great-grandfather, I'm sorry, grandfather.
Our grandfather. Mm-hmm.
Our next Ivy Talk will be held on April 19th from 6:30 to 8, and it will be prescribed burns, what they are and why we do them. As many of you all might know, we just had a prescribed burn out at Ivy Creek. And so we thought we'd share with you why we did that. You can sign up for that event just like you did this one on our website or social media page. As always, these talks are free and open to the public. And we hope you'll join us for that. If you've enjoyed this talk and you would like to support what Ivy Creek Foundation is doing for our community, please consider going to our website and becoming a donor today, or go to the MVFP website and donate to them and support their amazing work as well. Thank you all for joining us. Have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you guys. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.